Okay, it looks like we are live and rolling.
Great. All right. Well, it is 7 o'clock and I will call this meeting of the Old Saybrook Board of Education to order, and we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the
United States of America,
and to
to the republic in which it stands, a
one
nation,
God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Hey, so first up on our agenda is audience to citizens. So for those of you out there in the audience listening in, if you're interested in addressing the board, use your raise hand feature or function at the bottom of the Zoom meeting, and Trent will elevate you to allow you to speak. Our meeting conduct rules are on our agenda, page 2 of our agenda. So I'm not going to read all of them, but I'm going to hit the high points. If you are a speaker, you'll need to give us your name and your address. You'll get 3 minutes to speak. We'll have a maximum of 30 minutes total for public comment. I'll assign a timekeeper. Keep your comments and statements kind and polite, no boisterous conduct. If you cannot control your boisterous conduct, we will revoke your privilege of address. You're to refrain from any kind of presentation that discusses a specific employee of the Board of Education, regardless of whether you mention them by name or not, whether it's good or bad. Those kind of comments should come to us in writing, either on our board email, or you can reach out to the central office, or you can send us a letter. We still accept letters. And we typically don't respond directly to public comment during the meeting. We may direct the superintendent to answer for us if it's something that can be answered quickly. Otherwise, somebody will get back to you, either myself or the superintendent. So with that, Trent, do we have anybody from the audience of citizens who wishes to address the board?
Doesn't look like anybody is looking to address the board at this time.
Great. Well, I got to practice my speech, so that was awesome. It's always good. All right, I'll turn off my heater so you don't get my background noise. All right, so first up is reports from our student Board of Education representatives. So I'll hand it over to McKenna and Matthew.
Hi, everybody. So we don't have that much to report this week. For clubs, we recently have had trouble meeting regularly because there's been a lot of COVID concerns, and then we've had break and some snow days and stuff like that. So clubs are getting back on their feet. I know the drama club is. Midterms finished today, and second semester will begin tomorrow, which I'm really excited about. Matt Johnson, he released his capstone recently, and it's called Glad to Lend, and it highlights the contributions Mr. Bourne has made to the athletic program, the yearbook, and to the Old Saybrook community. So here's Matt.
Oh, hello, everybody. So yeah, I just finished my capstone documentary. It's about 10 minutes. It's about Mr. Bourne, and it's been out for, I think, about a week, almost 2. And I had a lot of fun making it. It took me about 7 months to make. And I'd really appreciate it if you guys checked it out. I spent a lot of hard work on it. It was a great experience too. So with that said, I want to move into our sports report. So we have the boys basketball team. They're currently 5-1. And they won against North Branford Valley. And I believe it was Portland in the past week. And their captains, Riley Lawson, Aaron Tolve, and Ryan Stratton have been performing excellently to help support the team. Speaking of media and stuff, I also did a little short highlight video for the boys basketball team. You can view it on my YouTube channel, Matt Johnson Media. Just search it up on YouTube. I will also post a link in the chat if you guys want to copy and paste that at some point. Here it is. And I will also, if you guys want to see the link, I don't know if Mr. Gerbers, I don't know if you posted it to the website yet, the documentary.
The documentary so far has only been posted for the board to see in their notebook.
Okay.
I haven't put it on any of our social media channels yet, but it is coming soon.
Okay, but they can view it through the notebook, correct?
Yes, they can.
Okay, all right. So I won't include that in the chat. So the link in the chat is for the boys basketball if you guys want to check that out after the meeting. Then we have the girls basketball. Their record right now is 2-6, which is not looking so well. They've had a lot of conflicts with the COVID quarantines and some issues along that, but they're hoping to regain their strength and get back up on their feet to break the streak. They've got 3 games this week. So for track and field, we both the girls and boys competed in a couple meets in the past 2 weeks, which were both huge victories. We had the girls who placed first with a 70-point lead. It was 141 against the second place HK, which was 77 points, which is absolutely insane. And we also took a victory in that same meet. This was the Shoreline meet on the 13th. We won 91-65, which the 65 was Cog in second place. So we're looking good for Shorelines. That's going to be next week because we have our last meet before Shorelines, and then we have states after that. So I'll have to report on that next time. So thank you guys.
Thank you, Matthew. George, you have a question or a comment?
Yes, sorry, just to get off mute. So Matthew, just I don't know how to actually say this, right? You have some amazing talent and skills in videography. I mean, I got a chance to see that video. It was, I was moved to tears. It was actually very well done. I've crossed paths with Richard Bourne when my kids were in high school, and so that was almost 10 years ago. And so he's been around, and he still says hi to me, in the streets. And my kids have graduated 5 years ago, right? 7 years ago. So, but whatever you did, it was incredible. It was a amazing tribute. He should be very proud, and you should be amazingly proud. That was very well done.
Thank you. Thank you for your kind words.
Yes.
Eileen, I see your hand.
Yeah.
Up.
Yep. So actually, I just was curious to know where you find it. I didn't find it.
The documentary?
Yes.
Yeah, we'll get the link out to the board. Trem, maybe we can just send an email out to the board.
It is in our notebook. It's in our notebook.
Yeah.
No, I know, but where is it in the notebook?
Correspondence, Eileen?
Oh, I went really quickly through it.
I'll send the link out
Okay.
in email as well. So
And
Thanks
we
so
will
much.
be putting it. We will be putting it out on social media, so it'll be more widely spread around after tonight. We got permission from Matt to do that, and we'll be doing that soon.
Thanks so much.
It is fantastic. Thank you, Matt, for doing it.
Thank you.
He certainly deserves that attention, and it's so nice that you were able to do it in such a elegant way.
Yeah, it really was moving, and we love Mr. Bourne. So our whole household was thrilled to see it. So we couldn't have picked a better subject.
Thank
Really
you.
excellent. Other questions or comments for Matt or McKenna? No, awesome. Yeah, thank you guys again for your report. And again, excellent job, Matthew, really awesome.
Thank you.
All right, so moving on to our next topic, which is correspondence.
So yes, there are two bits of information actually that's in the board notebook under correspondence. The first one is a memo from Heston talking about the Goodwin celebration of reading, which unfortunately we can't be there in person again, but Heston was requesting that if anybody wanted to do a video recording reading, that they'd be happy to share it with the students. So I think that memo is going out to us and community members as well. The second piece, which we've already talked about with Matt Johnson, Matt, I have to say, I actually got emotional watching it. It was so well done and such a beautiful tribute to Mr. Bourne. A high school grad, longtime resident, continues to be an important part of our high school community. Your documentary was so well done, very professional, and thank you for sharing it. What a great project. So that for everybody is in our board correspondence link. And that's it today.
I would like Matthew to do my video for the book I'm going to read for Goodwin. If we could coordinate that, that'd be great.
Me too.
That's excellent. Thank you, Karen. So we've got next up, I'll need a motion to approve our consent agenda. Again, just a reminder that there's no that we're not going to discuss any individual parts of this. This is just one motion to approve this. And I saw Steve's hand up and Eileen's second. Awesome. Thank you. All in favor, aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, so moved. Thank you. Thank you, Steve and Eileen. All right, so it's up to our first big topic of the evening, which is our 2022-2023 budget presentation. And before I hand it over to Jan, Julie, and Pam, just for our, our new board members and kind of for everybody's edification, the way we usually approach this from the board is we have the presentation tonight. If any of the board members have subsequent questions after seeing the material tonight or, want time to digest it, we generally don't ask for a motion tonight to approve it. That's what we're going to do on our meeting on February 1st. So that gives the board members who don't happen to be part of the Budget and Fiscal Committee an opportunity to have the presentation tonight, digest any information, ask any questions you may have, and then we'll have a special meeting on February 1st for the board to hopefully adopt the budget before our presentation to the Board of Finance on the 8th. So with that, I will hand it over to Jan, Julie, and Pam.
Thank you very much. Let me begin by thanking everyone for agreeing to add another Board of Education meeting to your agenda on February 1st. We have our building administrators and program administrators here tonight to answer questions. I thought you might want them here on the night when you're first reviewing. They won't be here for the most part on February 1st. We didn't want to give them another night out, but I do thank you for being willing to do that. Typically, we present to the Board of Finance a little bit later in the month, but this year we're going earlier, and so that necessitated that additional meeting. That won't typically happen in a budget season. For those of you who are new to the board, what we're going to do tonight is we're going to walk through the presentation that is in your notebook. We will also have the book with us that Julie and Pam can both highlight the important components of it. If there's a board member, new or not, who would like more detail and would like to go over it, we certainly can sit down with you and review any section of it to help you really feel like you understand it well so that you'd be able to support it or ask questions. So with that, I'm going to ask Pam to go ahead and start to screen share the presentation itself. The Budget and Fiscal Committee has done a great deal of due diligence led by George Chang, and they have asked lots of great questions. They have modified our presentation, or they've caused us to modify our presentation by giving us good suggestions. We've even changed some things about the budget book based on their suggestions. So we've been through a significant amount of the process already, and now we're ready for our prime time. And this presentation tonight will be tweaked after it becomes the board's budget. It will be tweaked again. And partly because it becomes the board's budget and you might suggest some additional changes to it, but also because we have different audiences and we meet the needs of all the audiences with this one presentation. So when we go to the Board of Finance, there are some additional needs to be met. One of them, for example, that we know we're planning to add is an additional slide about the ESSER money that we're getting from the federal government through the state. And so we think it's important that because they're not, digging into this or hearing about it regularly like you are, it's important for them to have a slide about what that looks like and where that money is being used and how much it is. Though they know they've heard it before, we want them to hear it again. When we go out to the general public, we will try to make our presentation look a lot like the towns. We work closely with Leanne Palladino and Carl Fortuna so that when we're presenting to the public, they're not switching gears. The presentations look like each other. And so we think that that's helpful for the general public before they vote at referendum. So our opening slide just highlights our mission statement and we can move on from there. If I move too quickly and someone wants to stop and hear something more, please let me know. Again, I've tailored it for the Board of Education. I know you do your homework and you've read the material. This first slide is our strategic plan goals, actually slide number 2. And I think our goals, but I would just like to say that I'm very proud of this strategic plan I really think that it says a lot about who we are. It really represents Saybrook. You know, it talks about equitable, and to me, it means we're welcoming to all so that they can achieve at their highest level, so that they can be successful and they can become the people they want to become and live the lives that they want to live. And then finally, our third goal is we want them to feel like they have a home in our schools and they have things that they can do there and enjoy doing. And these three goals, those are my words that kind of describe Old Saybrook and as they're represented in these goals. Next slide, Pam. The first goal on equity, really, we've been doing a number of big ticket items with that, not big ticket so much financially, but big ticket as in the big overarching themes. The Guiding Coalition has been formed, which will make suggestions. That's a group of teachers and administrators, and they will make suggestions to the board about work ahead. And I think that's appropriate work for the first year. Work on equity and making sure that all students feel like they have equal access. That they're represented in our community. That's very complex work. That's not something to rush. And it's something to make sure that a number of stakeholders have their voice heard. We continue to try to diversify staff. We continue to work to support our English language learners and build that program for them and make sure that they're successful here because they have the dual struggle of learning content and learning the language. And we've been doing a lot of training for administrators so that they can lead this work. And Pam will show you that these are interactive links. So Pam, if you want to click on that first goal, we're not going to do this for each one, but I'm going to have her do it for the first one. It's tricky when you're sharing because it takes you out to the website. All of these links are interactive. So when we post them on our website, members of the public can just click on and go to the section of the website that it references. And then all the way down the bottom here, you're probably the folks that will be most interested in this. If you keep scrolling down a little bit more, Pam. You keep going. One more. Okay. You can see that you can click on any of these goals down at the bottom, equity, high quality instruction, tiny little letters at the bottom, but they will take you to my goals, the administrator's goals, and they drill down into the actual school buildings and programs. So I'll let you look at those at your leisure. We can go back, Pam, to the presentation unless somebody has a question.
21 to 20.
Slide 4.
Okay.
It's all right. We'll wait for you.
I have to reshare.
Gives me a chance to get some water.
Are we there?
Next slide, please. Perfect. All right. The second goal, we have done a lot here, and these have been more expensive endeavors, but they have been incredibly fruitful. Hiring Columbia Center for Public Research and Leadership, or CPRL, they've really helped us, particularly Amity and me, get our heads wrapped around how to measure the strategic plan goals. And I think one of you or more than one of you even commented on how concrete the measurements are. And really, they helped us to get our thoughts put together on how to do that. And they're helping us now to try to launch, even though we've had this setback time of this resurgence of COVID and sort of the mental and emotional exhaustion that's gone along with it. They've been really sensitive to that, and they're helping to take some of that work and work with it and facilitate it without putting too much additional burden on anybody. We've had teachers get involved successfully in the open way learning, experiential learning at all 3 schools. We've had summer enrichment for the early childhood program. There's been English EL training, 21st century skills spearheaded by Jeremy Taylor and Joy Anastasio at the high school. In particular, that was a place where we needed to have more of that happening, and they have been creating deliverables on that. Next one, Pam. And then finally, and who knew how much we were going to need this? We knew we just didn't realize how much more important it was going to become. The socio-emotional supports piece it has continued to be incredibly important. And so this year we have through work with Leah, our socio-emotional person that we hired this year, that additional administrative position that we hired for the year. She has done a lot of work in organizing activities, not just for students, but also for teachers who have dealt with a lot of stress this year. She's also working on the new state assessment, the DESA assessment, because Kathy Bai was able to get us into the pilot program there. And that gives us an opportunity to gather some rich data about our students and where their strengths are and where they need some support. So those are our 3 strategic plan goals kind of fleshed out. And of course, not an excuse, just a reality that responding to COVID continues to be incredibly time consuming. It has an impact on the workload of pretty much everybody, right to students. It has an impact on our budget and everything we do. Workflow, one of the things we're talking about in budget and fiscal is this is really we're going to be responding to this for many years to come because there will be impacts and reverberations for many years to come. We have some successes here. Relatively speaking, we've had very few students quarantine. That has not been as true in the last few weeks, though we have such a high number of students who are vaccinated. We don't have to send vaccinated students home. And obviously, we feel like any time spent in school is better than students being home and isolated. Communication, if I can brag about our work here, has been considered by many. We have been told by many that we've done a great job with communication over the course of COVID. We had a lot of support from community partners, the town hall, emergency management, the police department, many, many others, youth and family services. But we really have done a lot of that work ourselves too. And I think everybody on the team deserves a pat on the back for that. And then of course, let's not forget, we actually won an award for that. That was submitted and we won an award for our COVID website because it was a one-stop shopping for people to find out what's going on and what needs to be happening. Next slide, Pam. Yes.
I just think that maybe for that last thing, I think it's presented by CABE.
Yes.
So maybe we should put that in there, just a thought.
Okay.
So the district won the Bonnie Carney Award of Excellent Communication and Education from the Connecticut Association for Boards of Education, because that is a person that was doing all the communication for CABE, and then she passed, and so they created this award, and I'd probably be something that the public would look at and go, oh, it's actually a state initiative too. I mean, a state initiative, but a state accomplishment.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
We can put that in there.
Sure. Perfect. Thanks.
Yeah. About our programs, and again, we have the administrators here tonight. So if you have any questions, they're here to take them. What I really want to highlight here and what I'm going to ask the board to do is as we open each one of these, I won't read them to you. I'll let you just take a look at them. But as we open them, I just want you to look at them as our thought partners through the lens of how well what's actually going on at the school supports the 3 goals of the strategic plan. Because when I look through them, I see significant connection, but I'd love your thoughts too. So let's start at the high school. Let's move on to the middle school. And then Goodwin. And then extracurriculars. And then finally, socio-emotional learning. So I asked you for input, so I'll stop there for a moment to see if you have any for us. Do you see the connections and the through lines to the larger plan? Okay, good.
I mean, just a quick comment back,
Yeah.
Jen, is that I mean, the connection is definitely there. People actually have focused in on the 3 goals, right? And so if you have those 3 goals focused in your mind, then the connection is very trivial and very obvious. If you don't, then it's not sure what the connections you're actually people make. But regardless of that, I think the accomplishments per slide that to describe each of the schools is still phenomenal. So I think that stands on its own, even if they cannot make that connection to the goals. I mean, do make that point, and so people will try to do that. But each of the slide on its own, standing on its own for the merit, is still incredibly very powerful.
Yeah, and I don't know if when we get to a larger audience, if it will matter as much. It might, and so I might be able to just say that, in a different way, that rather than inviting people in as thought partners to help us consider modifying. But it was important to me that the Board of Education could see it, because you've been involved since the beginning with the strategic plan. And you know how important it is to us that we stay highly focused on what we said we were going to do. The next slides you're used to seeing these. We include these every year. And this is just making a point. We have 2 slides of where our most recent high school graduates went off to from our schools. And this is getting back to that point about we're trying to prepare all of our children for the future they see for themselves. And so we send kids off to the workforce, to colleges, I can't think of this as a word, state schools, community colleges, private schools, Ivy Leagues, the military. And we want our kids to choose where they want to be and what makes them feel happy and successful. And so it is a complex thing to prepare students for all of those different futures, but it's our goal. Next, we're moving into the part of this presentation that really starts to get into how we create this budget. And it is the same. It's not exciting every year, but it's the same every year. And it's important that it's the same every year. We've certainly learned that in the last few years when everything got upended on us. It was nice to know that we had a process, that the process could be modified and adapted if need be, but that the process was very solid. And so we start with the things that we say that we're supposed to be doing. The strategic plan is what we're supposed to be doing. Well, how well are we doing it? What resources do we need to make it happen, to continue it and to grow it? We talk about the goals with the Budget and Fiscal Committee, the Board of Education. We present to the Board of Finance early on to get their thoughts. We try to do that every fall before we start. We review enrollment, and our enrollment is the trajectory, and the projections aren't necessarily matching quite as much as they used to. So we'll talk more about that later. We look for cost-saving opportunities everywhere to try to do the same thing to achieve the goals, but to do it in a way that can be more frugal. And then we talk to the practitioners in this school. And I tell this story all the time. When I was applying for the job here, one of the complaints, fair or not, I don't know why people felt this way, was that people didn't understand what happened with the budget process once it left the schools. And so we try to make sure that administrators go back and talk to people about what is in the budget. Once we create the budget, once it gets presented to you, they're free to go back and talk about what made it in and what didn't. And they can use the same list that we present to you to share with them. Other considerations. Next slide, Pam. Thanks. We always start with a zero-based budget process. I know that sounds obvious, but I do remember days when, in my younger years, when teachers and department leaders would just take last year's budget and throw 20% on it. And we never want to do that. We want to make sure that we're starting with zero. What do we really need? And then add in, multipliers, if you will, for things that we know are going to cost more money. Fiscal responsibility is important. We know that's important to the town, and we want to make sure that whatever money we get, we're using it wisely, which is why we remain focused on our strategic plan and our students' needs. We always check enrollment and staffing projections. Where are we going to need more? Where are we going to need fewer people? What does our enrollment look like? Where are our big classes? Where are our most needy students? The changing educational needs and models of instruction, well, we certainly have seen evidence of that in the last few years. I think it speaks for itself. We became a one-to-one district literally overnight, and everybody has a computer now. And that leads to the next one, the digital platform instruction, other resources. You know, something as simple as the legislators are working on what a digital platform is going to look like for 9 through 12 in next year. And we don't know what's going to come out of that committee, but that could have an impact on us and what we offer, because we want to offer whatever opportunities might be good for our students. I won't say much more other than obviously COVID continues to have an impact. We continue to work really hard to not put our facilities on the back burner. That's a mistake that can be made in some places. It's really important to keep facilities updated, clean, very livable and healthy. And I think that Julie Pendleton and our staff there does an excellent job. And of course, legislative and executive orders, you know, I try really hard to stay on top of what the latest is. And they're already, before they've even started meeting, it's already coming out of Hartford, the ideas and the types of things that we're going to see. We just got an update on HVAC today, which I sent forward to Mrs. Pendleton, because it may have an impact on some of the things we want to do around air conditioning, for instance. This is our historical enrollment, and it's broken down by certain subsets of our students. These are subsets of students that tend to be students who are more expensive to educate. Obviously,
for a quick second.
Sure, Steve.
If you're not, there's a couple that are unmuted, and it's causing a little bit of feedback in the stream. If you're not presenting, if you could just mute yourself, that would be awesome for us. Thank you.
Thank you. So these subsets of students, as I said, can be more expensive to educate. We want to educate these students. These are our students, and we're proud to do it. But they're broken out by us and by the state for that fact. There's also, for some of these students, additional support received by the state. Of course, never as much as you actually expend, but there is additional support that we get from the state. But these are broken up by special education students, 504 students, so students with a 504 plan, and students with free and reduced lunch. You've got a total percentage there. It is true, though, that some students may be in more than one category, so you can't really treat them as a separate subsets. They may be in multiple categories. Do want to point out to you, though, if you look at the total enrollment at the bottom, while we are down from 2019, we are up as of October 1st from 2020. That was not projected. So I think we have additional section of our ECP to thank there. I think we have had some people move into the community that was not projected because, let's face it, COVID wasn't projected at that time, and the impact that it would have. Potentially, we hear stories. It's almost an urban legend now about people moving out of the cities and out into the suburbs. Finally, we've been waiting for the millennials to do that. So I do think we're starting to see that. So that's exciting news that we're actually up by 10 as of the October 1st enrollment. Next slide, Pam. English language learners continues to be a group of folks who, students who has continued to grow over time. These students come into our district in our ECP program all the way through grades 11 and 12. And so we meet them where they are. They come to us with various backgrounds, various experiences, even various experiences in getting here. And some have had missed learning opportunities. All are working to learn our language as they also try to learn some significantly difficult content. And no matter how long we have them or how short we have them, we have to do our very best to prepare them for what comes next so that they can be, active participants and great citizens. Next slide is just the end of the process. So in October or so, I asked Julie to do the sort of artificial activity of a sustained services budget, which just means turnkey. If we turn the key on September 1st, doing exactly the same thing we did September 1st of this year, what would that budget look like? And obviously she has to build some projections into that to make that work. But the answer there is it would have been a $27,693,000 budget, or a 3.45% increase over the current year. And that's when we go to work. Okay, so there's where we were if we did nothing to build in some savings, make some changes, make sure our programs are being delivered, but doing it in as fiscally responsible a way as possible. Simultaneously, the administrators are working in their buildings with teachers to come up with the list, the ask. The number they came up with was a 4.47% increase over the current fiscal year, or $1.2 million. And so we take all the asks and we put them together and we look for opportunities to share resources internally, share resources in the region, look for savings in places like benefits, in places like, purchasing of oil and gas, just as an example. And the number that is presented to you tonight is the superintendent's budget is a 2.62% increase over the current year, or 701,976. Next slide. I want to just show the budget history. I think it's important for us to remember this. I always start with 2013-14. That was the first year I was here. That was a budget that was created in the year before I got here. So this is sort of the timeline of our budget during my superintendency. In the last 5 years, guess you didn't like that slide, Pam, huh? In the last 5 years, we've been about a 1.3 average. So I'm feeling that is an incredibly responsible, given the cost of living, given what happens with benefits and salaries. I am very proud of that. I really call that a maintenance budget, and we still were able to put some growth into our maintenance budget. Now you can go to Pam. Everybody who's been on the board has seen this slide a million times. Really, it's just a pie chart that shows you the breakdown of where the costs are associated in our budget. And clearly, salaries and benefits are about 79% of that cost. That is very typical for a Board of Education budget. They mostly run about 80% to human resources. And that's, we're slightly below that. Next slide, Pam. This next slide just demonstrates to you a comparison of salary, benefits, tuition, and transportation, because those are our biggest ticket budget drivers. So obviously the first column is salaries, and you can see there is a slight increase year over year. But in the next column, you have benefits, and you can see a decrease, a significant decrease year over year. We are a self-insured, we're involved in a self-insured consortium. Both Julie and I serve on the board. We have improved our buying power by being with that group. We've sort of spread out the liability by being with that group. It has, in recent years, worked really well for us. So we continue to, enjoy the benefits of being with them instead of being Old Saybrook on our own. Tuition costs, really, while they can go up, we talked earlier this year about the potential of having 6 new students potentially coming on to tuition costs, and some of that didn't come to fruition. I think in the last few years, and I almost want to cross my fingers, and we've really enjoyed pretty stable numbers, excuse me. And then finally, transportation, which is a huge budget driver, excuse the pun, actually goes down a little bit in this coming year. I want to point out before we leave that slide, that's okay, don't go back, Pam. Okay, that almost $24 million of this budget is in these 4 areas. Okay, next slide. I'm almost ready to turn this over to Julie to talk numbers with you. Teacher contracted wages, we compare ourselves to the state average. Oh, you may know this, but collective bargaining often is weighed heavily by a town's ability to pay. Old Saybrook is a financially stable community and is considered to have excellent ability to pay. So when we come in around the state average, as we are here, I think that we are to be very proud that that's where we find ourselves. I think Old Saybrook teachers are respected and paid well. And when we negotiate, we expect that that will continue to happen, but we are not coming in above the state average when you look at the two years. I should not have had popcorn before this presentation. That was a mistake. Next slide. Thank you. History of teaching positions, it's fluctuated, you know, and as one might expect, as our enrollment has declined a bit, so have our teaching positions. I think some people might think that that should be closer to a one-to-one. Obviously, that's not. I'll go back to, you know, the fact that we have students who need special programming. We have English language learners. We have students who need additional supports. There are more adults involved in delivering those programs. Yet you can see that over time, we have seen an appropriate reduction in the number of certified staff that we have. And then finally, we have this slide of area towns. Typically, Old Saybrook has been falling smack in the middle of area town per pupil expenditures. We're not quite in the middle of this time. We're hypothesizing that that could be partly because we expended more of our ESSER funds, perhaps, than others did. And so that drives up our per pupil expenditures. I also want to point out that you're seeing a different student count. You see that number 1052, which was not what we reported on the other slide. And that is because this number, the state does things as it will, is derived from the average daily membership, which Pam describes to me as the average of the number of students involved throughout the year by calculating it by each day. Whereas the other one was the October 1 official number. And with that, and none too late, because I need to get a lozenge, I'm going to turn this over to Julie Pendleton to talk about health benefits.
So, as the superintendent mentioned earlier, we are part of a consortium with 3 other communities, North Stonington, Learn, and Lime Old Lyme. And it has really paid off for us. You can see that trend averages between 8 and 10% pretty consistently year over year. And yet we're really seeing the fruits of that combined consortium. We're just under 1,000 contracts all total, which is really a good number. We hope that after this year, when those members are looking at the state plan, I think our numbers for the cost of policies, they're going to really see where the last several years have really paid off. So we hope that a few more towns, smaller ones like us, will join over time, and it will get even better and stronger. And you can see where our numbers for single, 2-person, and family coverage stand against the state plan. And we expect that the state numbers will go up again, while we are predicting and projecting a -5% in our numbers for next year. So I think the differential is about to grow even greater than it is currently. This slide is also interactive. And Pam, if you want to just click on one of them, that would be great, just to show, it gives you the categories by which each of these main descriptors include. And you can see where we are in the current budget, what we're proposing, and what the change is over the course of year over year. So in this case, we talked about water a lot last year. It's one of those accounts that can really fluctuate depending on how much irrigation we're actually using. So this one tends to go up and down pretty frequently or more often than some of the others. We've projected natural gas to be about level. As we all know, it's continuing to rise a bit. So we'll see how that pans out. We also have the opportunity to use dual fuel in 2 of our buildings. So we're kind of monitoring the cost of oil against natural gas. So that gives us a little bit of a possibility of savings from year to year, depending on those markets. And then all of the other categories, maybe, I don't know, want to click on one more, Pam? Let's see. Okay, so property insurance. So here's a great comparison to look at, because we joined with the town on our insurance for our workers' comp and property liability. And that has really been beneficial to both the town and the Board of Education. The town receives a rebate each year from KERMA, our carrier, if our experience continues to be good as it has been. So joining together, we were able to save significant dollars. The big decrease there is because the cost of flood insurance for Goodwin School had a significant decrease because they remapped FEMA remapped the flood zones. So fortunately, I think they finally realized that in 100 years, we haven't had a flood in the Goodwin School area. So that was a premium savings for next year as well. Thanks, Pam. And then capital. Capital is a big discussion each year. And we have put a bit of a different format together for this budget. Those items that are strictly maintenance type items, repairs, glass, replacement, fixing a burner, electrical, plumbing, all the, tile replacement, all the things that are repair type items have now been shifted in this budget to basically a maintenance repair or replacement account. What you see in the capital budget itself now are just those projects that we're trying to keep somewhat under $100,000 as our threshold for an operating budget project. And we, for next year, we have only a couple of small projects in the budget. However, you all know that there are a couple really large projects taking place, one at the high school with the lighting on the field, and then at Goodwin School with some electrical work and air conditioning. So those, although you don't see funds in the capital budget because they're significant, we have other project funds that we are designing what we call a named project account. And this is tailored after how the town puts those projects together. They take their named projects such as air conditioning for the other schools, the larger types of things, perhaps paving, several other boiler replacements, large ticket items, and they'll be hopefully in a named account that we're hoping the town is going to look at and begin to put together a funding mechanism for the Board of Education. Currently, we have $1.2 million in the sinking fund, and that would be some of the funding for those larger projects. And that needs to grow, obviously, to do air conditioning and some of those really big projects that lie ahead of us. We also have some ESSER funds, about $600,000, that is earmarked for the Goodwin School air conditioning project. And then there are some off-budget funds. And so this proposed list of potential projects that'll be named as specific projects has a variety of funding sources that perhaps can be considered. And we hope to work hand in hand with the town to make some of those projects move forward in the future.
And just to add to what Julie said, these are really fleshed out in your book, in your budget book, in the capital section. And Pam and Julie created, based on the Budget and Fiscal Committee's input, created some new slides, which I think were added to your book as well, which I think really clarify for all of our different audiences exactly how we want to spend the money. We did have just a brief meeting with the first selectman today to explain that section to him. And we have a new liaison from the Board of Finance to the Board of Education, Brad Thorpe, and we're planning to meet with him to explain that section to him as well, because we've changed things up from last year to match what the town is doing more closely in hopes that it will make sense to folks and be clear. Okay, last slide. So what we've presented to you tonight is a budget that we believe supports the district strategic plan. We know it does. It was designed to do that. And we see this strategic plan as a promise to the community, which we feel obligated to deliver on. We think it's fiscally responsible to the taxpayer. We budgeted with that in mind. We are aware of the role of Old Saybrook Public Schools in the community. That's why we talk pretty consistently with our colleagues on the town side to make sure that we're fitting in, our work is fitting in well and complementing the work done on the town side and vice versa. We are always trying to prepare our students for their future, whether that's college or something else. And that is an obligation that we have. We have contractual obligations, which really are a huge fixed part of our budget. As I said, almost 79% of our budget is in human resources. The vast majority of those people are part of a collective bargaining agreement, a union, and those are obligations that we must meet. We are always responding to the changing demographics, the changing student needs, those things that have been created by this pandemic and other issues in our society at large. And we are always, always, always growing and elevating our programs because a district that stands still really kind of goes backward, and we cannot afford to do that for these students. So with that, we are happy to take questions about this or talk about the budget book or anything at all that you would like.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. So any questions? Eileen, I see your hand. Go ahead. And hold on, you need to be unmuted. Hold on, Eileen.
There we go.
There you go. Thanks, Eileen.
Fantastic presentation. I think it's extremely inclusive and reflective and purposeful, and people, if they take the time, can see how all these can be applied in a very practical way with the explanations in terms of having it be interactive. I think it's terrific. I have a question. On slide 23, under professional learning, I was just curious. Let's see, I have to go back to the slideshow so I can click on getting more text. Professional development, it looks like it was, if this makes sense, down $6,125. I was just curious to know the reduction, and why it might have been reduced, if I have it accurate.
Amity, would you like to comment?
I think that I can. I think that's probably a reflection of the ESSER grant. I think that because a significant amount of 20% of that grant has to go toward academic support, and one of the ways in which we did that was through professional development. I think that's offsetting the cost there.
Okay, so it wasn't reduced, it was just, things were moved around in because they were supplied from a different account.
Yes.
Okay, thanks so much.
Thanks.
That's a great question, Eileen, and that just highlights why we feel it's important to add an ESSER slide to our presentation of the Board of Finance.
Thanks so much.
It's also a really good example of zero-based budgeting. You start with zero, you build what you need, and other funds, other avenues of being able to complete a task or fund a program. And that's what this is all about.
Thank you.
I saw Karen's hand up next. Go ahead, Karen.
Yeah, just really a comment. It was a very good presentation. The budget is both sound and responsible. And I know, Jan, that you've tailored this presentation, for us at the board level. But I always try and view this from the perspective of anyone in the public or other boards who are not in our educational bubble. And I don't know that everyone is aware of the significance and impact of both ELL and COVID on learning. And you talked, at length tonight about ELL, which was great. And I know you'll give more details, certainly, when you present. My concern is that, as the duration of COVID continues to extend, the risk of anxiety and other negative outcomes for our students increases. And, just want to be clear with the public how much, research shows that mental health and academic achievement are linked. So I don't think you can overstress the impact that schools are dealing with. And we've been doing really well with it, and other schools not as well. But I just want to make sure that the public is really clear of the impact and the significance and how you're managing it all, because you're doing a great job, but they need to know how critical this is. That's all.
And thank you, Karen. And I think that one of the things that bothers us is we don't know yet how much or how long the impact will be, but we are thinking that we're talking multiple years of trying to right the ship as far as the emotional impact on some of our students. Obviously, on some of our students, there's been less impact. One of the things that we did to mitigate the impact was to fight really hard to keep schools open. And that was a ton of work for a lot of people, and a leap of faith for parents to send their kids to school during some of the darkest days and some of the most worrying times when we knew a lot less about the pandemic than we know now. We felt that was the best way to stop the ship from rocking, as far as the emotions go. But as far as what we need going forward, we are still learning. We are still thinking about whether or not we need to use some of these federal funds to continue with the extra services of our additional socio-emotional coordinator that the board added this year. We don't know what recommendations are going to be made. And since it won't be part of this operating budget, we have a little bit more time to think about that. But we want to gather more data, and we're hoping to learn some good information from this DESA screener that we're going to be giving too.
Yeah.
Alan, I saw your hand up next.
Yeah, so just a comment or several comments, but overall, it always amazes me from year to year how this budget presentation gets more and more easy to read. It's more transparent. The work that's being done with the Board of Finance and the comments and recommendations that get put into this every year to make it an even better, more transparent document is just impressive to me. For a layman, to Karen's point, I think it reads pretty well. And I'm also impressed with how it's tied into the strategic plan. That's not new, but that really makes it impactful in terms of how we spend our dollars, where we spend our dollars, how students are at the center of that, and staff, of course. So that just two comments there. I'm impressed with the consortium and interested more in what Julie presented and Jan regarding the health savings. I think it was around $80,000 savings. I'm curious, and I don't know if this question can be answered, but how does that impact staff? So what's a reduction on a per capita, if you will? I don't even know if you have that number, and it varies by, what kind of plan they have, but that certainly has an impact on staff. And I'm curious if you drilled down even more on that and how beneficial that is to staff.
Do you want me to take that, Jan?
Yeah, go ahead. And I can always fill in if there's something. I just wanted to talk maybe about getting that number as it firms up later in the year. We'd be able to actually drill down to the details.
Yeah, and I think the important thing there is that there have been years when, if your health benefits, which are a significant driver, go up significantly in a given year, people walk away with a decrease in their paycheck because as you know, our employees pay a portion of the cost of the insurance. So we work really, really hard to try to make that as economical and and mitigate any of those, the increases or the trend that's out there. So there are some definite, pluses for not just the town, but also for the employee. And we'll be happy to, to give you those numbers as time moves on and we solidify the final piece of this.
Thank you, Julie and Jen, for commenting on that. I think that's really important. And one last thing I wanted to mention is, and it may not be appropriate for this discussion, but we continually give back. We're fiscally responsible in our budgeting, and we continually give back to the town coffers. And I think that's to be recognized. So the money goes back into the town budget and other, the town benefits and other ways from that money. I think we should celebrate that. That's being fiscally responsible. Some of the savings that, go in and the efficiencies that go into these budgets, some of them within our control, some that just come to us. But I think that's important to continue to recognize that we get money back and we're fiscally responsible with our budgeting. So thanks.
Thanks, Ellen. That was a great comment. I think important to remember. George, I see your hand up. Go ahead.
I mean, just a quick comment on just the timing, because I know this is a dry run for us initially, and then of course we do this again on February 1st. If people have additional suggestions, it's certainly all the ones spur up today, and then the additional SF fund slide and so on are really good suggestions. But anyway, if my time was correct, that was 35 minutes from start to end without, well, minus the coughing fits. But I don't know how much time you were projecting, how much time you have, but as that first go around, that's the time that I basically clocked in, about 35 minutes.
Thank you.
Thanks, George. Yeah, and I saw actually, and we'll get to this when we get to reminders, I think we had agreed to push the time of our Board of Education meeting back on the 8th to 7:30. So that would give us an hour at Board of Finance. So just something like on the reminder there for that. Trevor, I see your hand up, so go ahead. Up, and you're muted.
Sorry about that. I just want to make a comment. I thought the superintendent presented a very responsible budget, and I've had the opportunity to see their budgets for several years, and it's always been very, very responsible. And it's especially this past year, a couple of years of COVID, it's been so difficult, and all the steps we've taken to prepare this budget and all the time and all the, it's fabulous. So I thank you so much for doing a great budget. So, and actually I had a question on the capital, and I don't know if this was talked about tonight. I don't think it was, but I was looking through the materials before the meeting, and I noticed that for 2023, there was a bunch of big items for Goodwin, like air conditioning items like that. Is that going to be, that's not in the sinking fund, is it? That's part of the Board of Ed budget? Is that correct?
No. So those larger projects that you see in the current year are some of those are ESSER funds. So those are grant funds. 600,000 of that is grant funds. Some of it comes from what accounts called non-budget accounts. So that's money that's already set aside at the town in a couple of different accounts there. So they are not operating budget funds for those big projects.
Okay, that's all. Just want to clarify. So everything else looks great. Thank you.
Thanks, Trevor. That was a great question. Karen, I see your hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, just a quick question. I'm just wondering, I see on February, when is it, the 8th, we're presenting to Board of Finance, do we include the Board of Selectmen at that meeting, or how do they fit into this puzzle?
I think both Carl and Leanne will be at that meeting along with the Board of Finance.
Okay.
I don't believe the Board of Selectmen will be there as well. I think we're just presenting to the Board of Finance.
Okay, just wondering. Thank you.
No, good question, Karen. Thanks. And I think we'll have the opportunity to be, and it probably would be smart to do the meeting remotely since we've got one right after. So I suspect we'll be participating in their meeting remotely and then joining our meeting immediately after that. Other questions and comments from the rest of the board? Scroll through here, make sure I didn't miss anybody's hands. Eileen, is your hand up? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Okay, hear me?
Yep, go ahead.
Super. So this is just page 40. I think it's 40. It says general expenditures, FY23 technology equipment. So I'm just curious on, it says, equipment. I think it's 734, and it's obviously an increase. And I was just curious to know, what the increase might involve. Maybe it's new computers or, Chromebooks. I'm just not sure.
So that happens to be a portion of that account is for infrastructure. So in the capital plan, there is a line item for wireless infrastructure, as well as servers and switches and that sort of thing. So that's what that increase is attributable to, or
Okay,
most of that.
Yeah, thanks. It's not actually concrete, equipment necessarily for students.
Right.
Thanks.
Because they all got new equipment, fairly recently.
Okay.
And I just want to remind you, Eileen, it might be helpful to connect what you're finding in the PowerPoint presentation with the detail you're asking about. We do have the detail in the narrative under section 3. Is it kind of a good cross check if we don't happen to be here in the meeting and you have a question with what you're reviewing? You might already have the answer there. It can be helpful when you're researching it yourself.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, Pam.
That's certainly what I rely on all the time. I always go straight to the narrative, and it helps me to jog my memory about where we put things, because Pam and Julie work the numbers all the time, and I dive into it after a week of not looking at it, and I think that is the best place to go.
Thanks.
I just want to thank you again, everybody, for being willing to listen to us, focus on this, ask good questions. And I'm sure you're going to pour over the book again if you haven't had a chance already. I know Budget and Fiscal has, and we can take more questions next week.
Great. Yeah. And if I missed anybody with the presentation up, not everybody's on the same page, but I think I got all the raised hands, and I don't see anybody else's hand up. So if we're good, then to Jan's point, we'll have a special meeting on the 1st. If you've got questions in the meantime, you can direct them, through Jan or myself or George, and we'll, get back to you. And then we'll dive into this again on the 1st. But excellent job. And thank you, Pam and Julie, for your time tonight.
And thanks to our administrators who feed a lot of information into this budget, who are here this evening.
Yeah, absolutely. It's good to see all of you. All right, so moving on to our next topic, the softball cooperative.
And we're going to ask you to table that. We had an opportunity that I don't think is going to work out for the coming year.
Okay, so we'll table that topic, and then we will move on to.
It's one of those things, though, that's just another example of continuing to pursue regional opportunities.
Okay.
Just not this one this year.
Steve, did you have a question?
Yeah, table it though. Don't we actually have to make a motion to table it?
I don't know that we do. Do we need to make a motion for that? Or I thought I could set things aside on the agenda? No.
I don't think we need to make a motion on that.
No, I think you just not take it up.
Right.
Yeah.
We need a motion if we want to add an agenda item, but not taking something off, I believe.
Okay. But thank you, Steve. Good question. All right, so we will move on to the Saybrook Studies financial donation.
This is exciting. So, we have the new course, and Krista Bachman is here and she can talk more about it. We have an opportunity to accept a donation for this course. And this course is really unique. So, it's something that we planned for. It is part of our operating budget, but this is one of those classes that is very responsive to students' individual learning interests. And it's an elective program at the middle school, and students are deciding what they want to work on. And so in the moment, teachers have to pivot and make requests. And I know that in this situation, they've been given a donation from a private citizen, actually from a company and a parent as well. They've also asked for additional money from the Ed Foundation. And so they're receiving funds from both places. And all we are doing tonight is making the board aware of this contribution. It's not one that reaches a dollar amount where you have to vote, but we wanted you to be aware that we want to accept this contribution. Krista, anything that you want to add to that since it's your school?
I would just say it's a very exciting class. Originally, when we started talking about it, it definitely had more of a historical feel to how Old Saybrook came to be and things that have happened in Old Saybrook. And that is definitely a big component of the class. But it's definitely been built around an inquiry approach and a project-based approach. The kids have done everything from using metal detectors and finding artifacts to creating a museum, investigating folks that are buried in the local cemetery, down to building fishing poles, all sorts of things that are directly connected to our community, past and present, and individualized to what the students are personally interested in within the town of Old Saybrook. The 8th grade students are the ones that are involved in taking this class. It's part of their Specials 2 classes. And they are extremely excited about it, as are the teachers. So it's been a really cool experience watching the kids be able to explore some of their own interests, learn about our community, and really take an active approach in their learning process.
Any questions? I see George, your hand up. You beat me to asking, so go ahead.
Sorry, but you can ask first. I didn't mean to jump the gun. No, I don't have a question about the donation. I just had a comment about your write-up on this class. When Jen was going through her presentation on the budget and then each of the school, when you click through the slides about the highlights near the school, and one of the ones that you highlighted for the middle school was this Old Saybrook Studies. I think it was the last item on the middle school slide. It wasn't clear. I mean, it was no doubt a nice sentence, but it wasn't exactly clear what it involved. What you wrote here definitely, basically fleshed it out, and it's very impressive. I mean, people, I didn't appreciate how extensive the offering is in terms of the diversity. So I appreciate the report itself in terms of describing what it does. And so thank you for writing that.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, George. Eileen, I see your hand up.
Yeah, so it sounds like an exciting class. My question is, somebody's given a donation, and what does that donation use for? Because when we add a class, it's not normally, it's not based on the funding, but this is something different. This would support materials, or, what is this necessarily used for?
Yes, this would support materials based on students' personal interests connected to the class.
So like a field trip, if you're going to have to take a bus somewhere, or for?
I think in this particular case, they're talking more about materials for them to be able to build and create some things based on the particular projects that they're working on.
Right, so you're talking about materials?
In this case, for the piece that was donated by the family member, yes. The Ed Fund, I believe that they did ask for some additional funds that could go towards transportation as well.
And metal detectors, camera. So, okay. It depends upon and the other thing is that, so we're saying that this is a class that's really responsive to student interests. And so we weren't able to predict some of these expenses. But I think in the future years, after we've taught it a couple of times, I think it will be easier to predict expenses associated with the class. But right now, given that it's so new and wants to be so responsive, it created this need that has been addressed in these two ways.
It's kind of exploded into whatever the kids, the variety of interests that the kids have had. So it's been really interesting watching it unfold and change and evolve as it's started this school year.
And so is this started in the fall?
Yes. So we just ran through our first set of classes and the semester is switching now. So the second group of 8th graders will be able to have that. So all of the 8th graders this year will have the opportunity to be in that class.
Nice. And does the company that supports this learn about it because they had a student in there, or because how did they find out about it?
Yes, there was a student connected to their family. Yes.
Okay. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Eileen. Other questions or comments? Cool. Well, it sounds like a cool program. Jan, this doesn't require a vote by the board, right? This was just informational.
Right. Just wanted to make sure what you heard about it, had a chance to ask, and we got it into the minutes.
Excellent. All right. Well, if there's no other questions, then we will move on. Thanks, Krista. All right. Next up is the ECP expansion. So I'll hand that over to Jan and Kathy.
So, I'll just do a brief introduction. I think Kathy and probably Heston will want to weigh in too. As you know, we brought ECP programming to you to request a reduction in tuition based on the fact that we knew that there were families in our community who could not afford early childhood programming for their students. And we recognize this significant benefit to students who received high quality early childhood programming. And so the board has agreed over the last few years to reduce the tuition, and we're looking for an additional reduction this year. I will add a little side note that the state, although they've tried every year to do something about universal preschool, there does seem to be a significant amount of conversation about making that a reality in the coming years. I think they are feeling particularly strongly and brave about it because of the amount of federal money that has moved into the state. And so it's kind of nice to be here on the edge of this, on the precipice of it, and perhaps in a really good position to take advantage of any funding that comes our way. And with that, I will turn it over to Kathy Bai for a short presentation about our ask about this year.
Oh, good evening, everyone. And many of you have seen this presentation a couple of times, but we're bringing the whole presentation forward for everyone. And I will just try. Is Trent going to share this, or am I? Is Trent here?
He's here.
I'm happy to drive the presentation if you would like.
Okay. I mean, I have it here, but.
Give me 1 second. I will pull it up.
All right. I'll put mine away. Okay. So as Jan said, this is something we started 2 years. Well, we came to you 3 years ago asking for this, the ability to work toward our goal of universal pre-K for our students. And we said it would be a phased-in project over about 3 to 4 years, so it didn't have as big of an impact on our budget. Now, when I went to update this, the last 2 years, it was, Trent, do you have it, or should I? Can you guys see it?
I apologize. I'm having technical difficulties, but it's not letting me run the meeting and share it at the moment.
All right, so let's see here. I have it down here. All right, Jan knows how. All
Wait,
right.
I think I got it. Do I?
Oh, I thought that was me.
Oh.
No, this is actually me, actually. That helps.
Oh.
Or I can unshare, but
No, that's
it
good.
was, if this works, we can keep it this way.
Okay,
That's fine.
all right. So our goal is, as we said, to provide universal preschool for all of our children in Old Saybrook at no cost to families. This is an initiative our state has looked at, as Jan said, the federal government is looking at, and we feel strongly that this is something that on many levels will benefit our students. Do I tell you, George, next slide, or okay? So the previous 2 years when we presented it tied to the strategic plan, and that it fit under our changing demographics, social, emotional, supportive students. But when I went to do the presentation this year, it fits equally well, which shows that our goals and our strategic plans are well aligned, and it really fits under all of our strategic plans, but I thought the one that best fit was the one under equity. We want all of our students to have the same opportunities. So that's the main connection. I don't know, Heston, do you want to talk about the connection to the building goals?
Sure. Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Kathy. We have our goals aligned to the strategic plan. So they really don't look much different than the goals in the other buildings or from the strategic plan itself. But obviously, we are welcoming more children into our school. So this aligns very nicely with equity. And we are having students at a younger age, more students at a younger age in our building. And we are feeling that the sooner we get our hands on them, the better. And it's really been fortuitous that we have expanded during the pandemic. Because a lot of the preschool programs have not been able to stay open, and we have, because we can share staff around the building. We go on to the next slide, Joe. I was going to say Trent. George, on to the next slide.
Next one again, George. Yeah. And as we presented before, the research supports this on many, many levels, that targeted preschool programs, such as the Head Starts and those, don't provide the same growth as a universal program. The research also shows that early intervention will influence the economic, the health, and the social outcomes of our students. And an alarming piece of research was that 60% of children enter school with the cognitive skills necessary for school success. And 40% with the social emotional skills. So, we are able to, with our preschool, to address each of those issues. So the research is ripe with why this is and just intuitively, it is something that will benefit our whole community. Thanks, George.
And if I could add to that, Kathy, one of the things that is not as student-centered, but certainly is community-centered, is we want to be competitive with the other school districts around us, many of which have early childhood programs that are either reduced tuition or free. It does attract families to a community to know that this is available to them.
Okay, next slide, George. The timeline. So in 2021, we first reduced our tuition rate for peers, and we expanded by adding a section to our preschool classes. And at that time, we shifted a little bit in terms of our classroom composition. We used to have a separate class for students who were more at risk, and some for the students had peers and students with IEPs, and we just have them all heterogeneously mixed. And we think that's to the benefit of all students. Then this year, we reduced the tuition again for our peers. We've been working on that PD that Amity mentioned on the play-based instruction. We have been researching and looking at before and after school programs, and this has proven to be a lot trickier than we had hoped. But Heston's been working with our early childhood council on some approaches, and we're hoping that that's something that hopefully in the next year we'll be able to accomplish. Do you want to talk a little bit about what we're doing, Heston? Or?
Well, we continue also to partner with the YMCA, who is interested in running preschool for us, or pre-care before school starts, before school care. So we're working with them and through our connection with the ECC, the Early Childhood Council, we've also worked with some agencies in the state that perhaps will be able to look at regulations that would favor us housing this at Goodwin School, but still a long way to go. COVID has held us back, but there is interest, and we do have a lot of parents who are asking for it. In fact, I think if we were able to establish this, I think many of our students would stay right in our building throughout the entire summer. With air conditioning coming, that may become more of a reality in the next couple of years.
A big issue for the Y this year was they couldn't get the staff, and they said, we'd love to do it, but that was a big driver for them this year. So we're hopeful. So for the coming year, 22-23, we're looking to reduce the tuition such that there's no tuition for 4-year-olds. So it truly is a free program for our 4-year-olds. And that for the 3-year-olds, it would be reduced again to a very minimal cost. And then looking forward to the following year, it being universal, no cost for all pre-K students. Next one, George, thanks. So these are some of the financials. In 2021, we had 45 tuition students, and the yearly tuition was $3,450. This year, we had put into our projections 45 tuition students. We actually had 68 tuition students. That's how much this program has grown. For next year, because all our 4-year-olds would not be paying, we would just be charging for the 3-year-olds. And we budgeted for 40 tuition students at a, we would get $44,500, and then the following year, 0. So that's what the financials would look like. Next slide. So a little bit about this year. We have 88 students currently enrolled in our early childhood program. We have 6 classrooms of either 14 or 15 students. We just sent out 2 weeks ago the posting for new peers for next year. And we're anticipating we have 37 3-year-olds. So we're anticipating at least that many 4-year-olds. Historically, we've had slightly fewer 3-year-olds. So, but we have projections. Pam has projections that she has through births in town. And so this is pretty solid base for what we're going to have for next year. We didn't add another section this year. We have, we've maintained this same amount because the previous year with COVID, we had a marked number of families who decided to keep their kids home, and we weren't sure how that was going to run, but we have the 6 solid programs. We did have 3 requests once school started that we weren't able to accommodate, which was unfortunate. We'll have a better idea of applications once the application period is over on February 25th. And then we mentioned that the Early Childhood Council has been working with Heston and the public schools for that solution to before and after care, because that will probably allow a few more kids to enroll. So in terms of anticipated students for next year, we have the caveat about COVID, because every year we have those families saying, oh, I'm not quite sure. I can imagine sending your little 3-year-old for the first time. I totally get it. We do know we have 37 remaining in preschool. We have 2 new birth to 3 referrals. And in the past 2 years, we've had 56 and 55 applicants. So we're anticipating around that same amount for next year. Do you want to go, Heston, or do you want me to keep going?
You can keep going, but then I have one success to add to this.
Okay. Can't wait. So the anticipated successes are that we will have programming available for all of our students, regardless of their ability to pay. And that leads right to our equity goal and strategic planning. We're projecting improved performance on standardized tests and the standards for our profile of a graduate as they move through the grades. Research shows we should be able to maintain our high graduation rates, more college completion, the earlier you start. We are providing more spots for preschool given some of these community closures. Early assessment of our kids will result in quicker identifications of the need for intervention. We'll have smoother transitions to kindergarten. And as Jan mentioned earlier, the state level is looking at this and we want to be on the forefront of it. And what's yours, Heston?
I think something that we should be really proud of is these students are able to access all of our specials areas. They're able to go to art and get specialized art instruction. They can go to music. They go to library and they have more books in their hand. They're taking books home with them, more print materials in their hands to get them familiar with holding books, words, letters, sounds. We have PE that they can go to. They have computer class that they go to. But also think about that we have speech and language services. We have OT, we have PT. And oftentimes these children may not have an IEP or have an official referral, but those teachers can reach out to those specialists in our building and get guidance about what to do with these children and what interventions to run. So I guess see this experience for our young children in Old Saybrook to be something really proud of, because if they were in a private daycare, they really wouldn't have access to all those opportunities. And it feels like our responsibility that we have these resources, that we can share them. And I think it's going to benefit us from pre-K to 12 in the long run.
Thanks, Heston. And then challenges, they're the same challenges, that we've had this year. COVID does make it a little bit difficult to predict, but look at us this year. We have 88 students. So that accurate count, because NASDAQ's projections are only, they're projections, but as I said, Pam has done some projections based on actual births in Old Saybrook, so we feel pretty confident. A challenge continues to be trying to find the before and after school care providers. And as Heston mentioned, we'd love to do summer programming too. Any questions?
Let's see, I see Karina, you've got your hand up, so go ahead.
Thanks. That's a great presentation, Kathy. Thank you. I have two questions. One is on the budget slide. For this year, you had significantly higher enrollment, almost 20 additional tuition students. So do those added revenues then just get put back into the program to offset costs, or what happens to that money?
Right. Historically, we've used that to help fund, if the more students you have, you might need more paraeducators or more, so we do try to use it to offset some of the additional costs.
I can confirm it goes directly back into the program. We use all the tuition that comes in to offset the additional staffing we've had to add as we added sections this year. So it all goes right back to cover staffing.
Great. That's great. And then my other question is related to measures. I agree with everything that you said. And obviously the research shows that ECP, has an impact on students' ability to learn. You mentioned during one of the slides that we have a high graduation rate. When and how are you able? So when will you begin to be able to measure the effect of having this ECP program within our schools? And what are those measures that you're going to be looking for to see that it has actually had an impact? Because, right, again, we already see very high graduation rates and our students are high performers. And so I imagine it might be difficult to actually measure the success of this program. Have you calculated what you'll measure and when you can start measuring?
No, but we do have to figure out what those specific ones. We do follow some of our students. For example, we have more and more students who are English language learners in our preschool, and kind of watching them with their reading skills and things as they're going along. And, what can we be putting forward within our preschool program to assist with that? We know just immersion in the language and all the play-based things help, but as far as quantitative measures, that would be a good thing for us to look at, Karina.
I wonder if you do have some good quantitative measures, you may be able to then influence the state, right? If we are truly leaders, we can say, hey, look, we've done this, and here's the proof that the rest of the state needs to get on board.
Right. Yeah. And as Jan said, there are other towns doing it. I don't want to make it sound like we're way ahead of the game, but yeah, exactly right. We can prove, or we could show how our kids are doing based on that. It's something for us to really look at.
I think one of the leading indicators, meaning that one that we will be able to observe sooner rather than later, will probably be the on-grade reading for students who traditionally, in groups that have traditionally struggled.
Right.
Thanks, Karina. That was a good question.
Yeah.
Very good.
Alan, I saw your hand up next. Go ahead.
So great presentation, and Heston and Kathy's comments are, so important. The only thing that can make this more attractive to families is to offer them a paid vacation to Disney, frankly, because there's so many benefits to this, and the research supports this. Sorry, I had to add a little humor in there. Thanks for laughing, Kathy. But I really was thinking about what Karina was thinking about, longitudinal study, and what are going to be the benefits that bear out in statistics. And I think I'm really interested in that, see how that plays out over the next 5, 10, 12 years. Have we surveyed parents at this point in terms of their experience and what they've seen as benefits? Do they have any suggestions for improvement?
Not pre-K exclusively, but another great suggestion.
I will tell you that parents have volunteered the one thing that they would love to see is before and after care, something that we have tried to provide, obviously at cost to the parent, but still it would cost a parent far less to pay for that than to pay for a full day of daycare. But we've not been successful. Kathy and Heston alluded to some of the why, but the biggest problem has been just COVID and lack of folks looking for employment. We're certainly not alone in that, and childcare is not easy work. And so, people, when they have choices, choose different work. And we have not had any luck. Neither have any of the vendors that we tried to work with to create a program, because we don't think it's something we could deliver ourselves. They haven't had luck in hiring either. And so all our conversations stalled in that area. That has been the one consistent piece of feedback for improvement that I've been receiving.
Thank you, Jan, for those comments, and thank you, Kathy.
Next up, I saw George's hand up.
Yeah, I have several comments and questions, but I think it's all tied into one specific larger question I have, right? So I'll start with that one. So do we have a sense of so let me back up even more. So the goal here is ECP, right? So it's for everyone. And so the question is, how close are we to actually accomplishing that? So, right, so I'm going through these slides, and I'm trying to do the numbers in my head, and I'm missing numbers, right? So which I can't actually figure it out. So I have the benefit of controlling the slides too, which is amazing. So if you just look at this really quickly, right? So currently there are 88 students, 37 are going to be returning, which implies that 50 kids potentially are graduating to kindergarten. And so if next year's kindergarten class, I don't know what it's going to be, but let's say it's 60 kids coming in, then essentially we are almost 80%, by math, all everybody's almost there, right? So I mean, I guess I'm trying to get a sense of what it is, what percentage of getting everybody onto ECP have you accomplished, right? I mean, clearly there's still programs out there in the community which are attracting other families, and so we're not 100%, but how close are we? And I said this, and the other comments I have relate to this. I mean, certainly coming back to Karina's question and Alan's question, right? In terms of how do we assess these things, and so it gets to be difficult if your baseline is already pretty high. So if you're starting off at 50%, 60%, so that was before ECP even started, then begin to see gradual improvements above a pretty high baseline gets to be very difficult, right? So again, I have the benefit of the slides, which is why I put the little star here, right? So I think one of the things for the benefit is going to be this early assessment, right, that you normally don't get if you don't do this. And I guess then my last comment or question related to this is, I'm going to go into the report that you wrote, Kathy, in your section of the report where, February 25th is the date that's coming up for registering for this ECP. And you mentioned a bunch of places where you're, like a better word, advertising ECP, and that is like the school websites and so on. But again, in my maybe a very naive view, right, that the families that actually need these are the ones that perhaps have less access to websites and so on. And so I'm just wondering if there are other avenues where this program can be advertised, so to speak. And so like the Youth and Family Services, the library, even area pediatricians, right? They actually see kids and they can identify, I guess, this kid can actually benefit from early childhood education, those kind of things. And so again, the goal is to try and get to as close to 100% as possible, but especially the ones with more need, right? So, and then so that would have the impact on what Karina and Alan was talking about. So, a lot of comments there, but again, good comments, good presentation, but I'm just really interested in knowing, how close are we to getting that goal, right?
And to your point about trying to reach out, I was a little concerned last year because we didn't seem to be having as many students who are English language learners. So I did ask our teachers, our EL teachers to, kind of talk with the families that they know and say, do you have neighbors? Do you have friends? Because I wanted to make sure that, that word was getting out there. That was, one of the populations I was nervous that we weren't getting. But yes, certainly to pediatricians, we do advertise with all of those you mentioned for our preschool screenings, but we have not sent the notice of the applications, and we can do that this week.
But even for this year's entering kindergarten class, to give a sense of how many of them were returning students from the Goodwin's ECP?
How many of this year's kindergarten
class, right? So what are we?
ECP? I don't remember.
Okay, right.
I don't either, but I also don't think that any of our 4-year-olds that were in ECP last year chose another school. They all came to kindergarten.
I think that's another advantage, that you have this early program that is much more approachable to all families. And I think that once they get absorbed into the Goodwin family, they tend to stay in the Goodwin family. George, this won't answer your questions, certainly the way you're trying to drill down into the percentage of the total number of 3- and 4-year-olds who are attending our ECP program. But in the document, in the letter in the budget book on page 4, you have a pretty good sense of the students moving forward. And clearly, when you look at the number of kindergartners over the past few years, you can see that we are attracting a large percentage of the 3- and 4-year-olds, especially the 4-year-olds, to this program. And I think that with this change, if this is approved tonight by the board, I think you're really going to capture, an even larger percentage.
Thanks, Jan. Thanks, George. Steve, I see your hand up. You can go next.
I'll try and be quick. I know we're starting to get on here. I was very fortunate. My son was able to be a part of the ECP program and did it both when he started when he was 3. So he did it as a 3-year-old, did it as a 4-year-old, and then transitioned into kindergarten. And one of the things I noticed the most is all the teachers at Goodwin have taught. So he has this continuity of care, I would call it, from all the years he's been at Goodwin. He's in 3rd grade now, and what's that? So he'll be 9 in March. 6 years he's been in the Goodwin school system. He's learned so much, just social, being on a bus, being in the school. So when kindergarten came around, he wasn't scared. He was fortunate he had an older brother that kind of walked him through Goodwin at the time. But the ability to grab them early and bring them into that world, whatever we can do for all parents. I was very fortunate. We won the lottery that year. It was a lottery back then to be able to get in, and somebody couldn't pay. Unfortunately for them, they couldn't afford the ECP program. I could. We got them in. If we could take that barrier out, I'm all for it. But the program itself has been amazing, and and we're working through things. And with that, those years, I mean, he's been there 6 years in 3rd grade. That's amazing. And we're able to work through so much. So whatever we can do to help all families and have that opportunity, I'm all for it. And great job to the ECP program and Goodwin as a whole.
That's awesome, Steve. It's good to have feedback from somebody who's been through the program. So that's excellent. Thanks for that feedback. Eileen, I see your hand up too.
It's actually a virtual hand, huh?
Yes, that's exactly it. Good job.
Anyway, this is nothing new. This is something that I've been really supporting, throughout my whole educational career, because there's no question that early childhood education for children and their families is essential. I think the piece that is very exciting is the opportunity to link equity with the early childhood program. Here we are, we're on a coastline town. We might not have that much diversity, but I think there are families that definitely are certainly interested in having their children be in safe environments that are helping them through the years. I'll share something personal. Many years ago, I had gone to a restaurant in Old Saybrook, and the waitress was from Ecuador, and we chatted for a while in Spanish. And she let me know that she had a child that was living with her mom in Ecuador, but she was going to be bringing her to the United States and being part of Goodwin School. So being able to be language literate and help her to navigate the school system, this young woman now is actually a dental student. So what happens is that when you have, they always say, one significant adult that can communicate with a family, whomever that might be, in their own language that resonates and they trust, you will get people. And so I'm curious to know if maybe to piggyback on the topic, that George had mentioned, it's really something about, do our Spanish teachers, is there a way to be able to have them do a session for families so that they are communicating in their own language and can have feedback and maybe understand the opportunities? Because sometimes, they just stick their children in front of a TV, which is not uncommon. So that might just be a thought. And my other question is this, that on slide number 10, I thought we decided that it was going to be Old Saybrook's profile of a learner, right? Not necessarily of a graduate.
You're right. I didn't change that this year. Sorry.
No.
Right.
No sorries. I just was thinking that, that's powerful as a learner. So that's exciting. Fantastic presentation, and the opportunity to reduce any fees is just even more inviting, and really is the equitable, fair way to demonstrate what we believe in as a district. So thank you so much.
Eileen, to answer your question really quickly. So we have our EL teachers in our building that support all of our EL families and students. So it's another resource that is extended down to the ECP program, and the teachers partner with Melissa and Piper, and they reach out and they call and they have meetings and they translate. So we're very much aware of pulling these families into the fold by speaking their native language.
And then maybe they can actually talk to other families that have younger children.
You got it.
Thanks so much, Heston.
Thanks, Eileen. George, do you mind stopping sharing so I can see everybody once? Thank you. Excellent. So any other questions or comments? All right. At this point, then I'd like to look for a motion to approve the ECP expansion as presented. Well, a lot of hands went up. So I saw Eileen and Steve second. So all in favor, aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, so moved, and that looked unanimous, Trent.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great, that's good stuff. All right, so we're going to move on to our reports by administration, and we'll start with Heston, since this was really just Heston's meeting tonight, and the rest of us were just here. So any questions for Heston for his report, or any comments, Heston?
No, nothing that I really want to highlight other than, I'm so thankful to Karen Vanderhorst and our medical staff. They are working overtime in keeping us up to speed with all the COVID cases. So kudos to them. We really owe them a debt of gratitude.
Yeah, here. Absolutely. Eileen, I saw your hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, and I know it's getting late, so just curious about, I've never heard about the DESA assessment. I know we're going to be piloting it in Old Saybrook. And what does that entail, or what does that address?
So am I muted? No. So the DESA assessment or screener is a screener that teachers now are going to use. They'll be answering a series of questions to evaluate the social emotional health of our students. The prior assessment was called SABRE, and that was students answering questions. And this assessment will, we think, going to be yielding more positive, not more positive, but more accurate results, as professionals who are with these students every day are going to be evaluating and seeing if these students need any help in a variety of areas. So this is the first year we're using it. Teachers actually at Goodwin and at the middle school are being trained tomorrow of how to fill out that evaluation. So more to come on that, Eileen.
Thanks so much.
I mean, it's an initiative from the state, and we were able to sign up as a cohort to do it. And it's aligned to the CASEL standards, those social emotional standards. So our teachers will be able to know specifically their group, their classroom. Oh, these kids need more in terms of self-awareness. These kids need more in terms of relationships and things like that. So we're participating along with many districts in the state on this.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for Heston? Great. Thanks, Heston. Any questions?
Sarah?
Oh, yes.
I'm just wanting to look at something. I know that on the climate committee, he was saying something about riddles. And I know that the schools, to enhance school climate. And it's interesting because in one of the schools I work in, this was what they put up on a similar angle for students. Why did the student do multiplication problems on the floor? And the answer is the teacher told him not to use tables. Anyway, it's just something that gets young people engaged.
Absolutely. Thanks, Eileen.
You're welcome.
Great. Any comments or questions for Krista? Krista, any comments for the board or?
I just wanted to highlight a little bit of the work that our teachers have been doing. We've been looking lately at our learning process. And I think in the past, it's been a lot of teach, assess, adjust, teach, assess, adjust. And one of the things that we have been trying to do is get the students more involved in that process. So teach, assess, but then have students looking at their own assessments, understanding their strengths and weaknesses, and then making choices about their learning based on what they found out about themselves and what they know and can do. So that's something that we have been starting to dive into, and the teachers have already began to adjust lessons based on that assessment data and having the students be able to make some more decisions about their learning process. So it's been really an interesting process to go through with the staff. And I think we're just kind of the preliminary level with that, but it definitely aligns well with our strategic plan goals of having more choice and allow students to choose whether it's what they're learning in some cases, how they're learning in some cases, or what it is that they need to go back and relearn or extend upon based on that formative assessment data. So it's really getting the children more involved in that process.
Cool. George, I saw your hand up.
Right. I mean, thanks, Krista. I mean, the question I had was actually the first paragraph of the report, which I suspect is exactly what you just talked about. And so my quick question very quickly is a very exciting approach. And the question is, are you extending this all the way down to 5th grade, or is this just for the upper grades?
This is all grades. Everybody in the building has been working on it, and it goes well. Depending on what the teachers are working on, we've been able to find ways to implement that from a math class that might be more a traditional approach to the OWL training that this teachers have had with a more project-based approach. But in both cases, teachers were able to identify places where they can offer more choice, really based not just at the end how they're presenting their information, but also along the process, which we think will help the students be better learners and take more ownership for their learning process.
That's amazing. Yeah, I mean, to do this on the 5th grade level, that's fantastic, right?
Yes, actually, the first lesson that I got to observe where the teacher implemented this was in a 5th grade classroom, and it was very cool to see.
That's impressive.
Excellent. Thanks, George. Eileen, go ahead.
If I was going to say that in past years, the Board of Education has actually raised, that issue, or I know that I did, in terms of how are students, even in the high school, trying to get a sense of assessments and what they can look at and how they could integrate greater strength in those areas. And so, as opposed to just giving parents a score. And so, because it's a formative assessment, it appears that this way they're not just giving it to a student. The student is trying to better understand their strengths and weaknesses, or challenges, I'll say.
Yes, absolutely. And then make some decisions for themselves about what they need to do next,
Right.
or how they're going to do what they're going to do next.
Correct. And how important is what the assessment is really saying in terms of practicality.
It's definitely, I think the combination of this and looking at standards and using rubrics has shifted the conversation from what's my grade to what do I know and what do I need to do next.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, Eileen. Any other questions or comments for Krista? Thanks very much, Krista.
Thank you.
All right, on to the high school, and I see Joe is with us tonight. Joe, any comments for the board?
Yeah, I guess I would just piggyback kind of off what Krista was talking about in terms of our advisory program this year. It's really gotten off the ground. I think the addition of Leah O'Connor to help guide us. We have a devoted group of teachers, and their kids on Thursday are going to be reflecting on their midterm exams and talking about what they do independently in terms of preparation. So they're actually going to be using CASEL standards to match up with that. And there's been a lot of talk about self-regulation, being aware of emotions. And the kids have really kind of grabbed it and taken hold of it. And it's nice to have that CASEL foundation to build around. So I just want to kind of highlight our advisory committee has been doing a fantastic job in terms of pre-planning, and we're starting to get into cycle of regularly meeting, and it's been very, very productive.
That's awesome. That's great to hear. Any questions or comments for Joe? Great. I'm interested in hearing how the midterms went, Joe. So I'll be looking forward to feedback on that. Next up is Amity with curriculum. Any comments for the board, Amity, before I open it for questions?
I just wanted to make sure that everybody got to see examples of experiential learning in action, because so much of what's going on in our classrooms now looks different than when we were all in school. So I wanted you to be able to kind of get a peek into those classrooms, because it's pretty exciting there.
Yeah, that's really cool. Questions or comments for Amity?
Looking forward to looking at the Spanish culinary immersion video.
We'll make sure you get to.
I have it here. Yeah, it's just, yeah, wonderful.
I see your hand up, Karina. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that was an excellent representation, Amity, of how those techniques are being implemented. So I really appreciate the way that you shared that report with us. So thanks.
Oh, great, great.
Awesome. Thanks, Karina. Other questions or comments for Amity? Oh, go ahead, Eileen.
Yeah, one thing I just appreciate very much is that the end of the Amity, your present, there's the alarm. At the end of your presentation, I appreciate the clarification on the Old Saybrook Public Schools mission statement, but then also how it integrates, but yet is separate in terms of the vision of the Old Saybrook Public School learner. And I think one really does blend well with the other. And one is very much reflective over, you may have a mission statement, but then what you take with the mission statement comes out as an Old Saybrook Public School learner.
Yes, yes, they nest together so well. As Jan always says, the nesting dolls. And I thought that seeing those in connection to the actual events that happen in a classroom would maybe ground those ideas.
Yeah. And I think that it's powerful to say and achieve their highest expectations.
Yes.
And what are they? And maybe that's what we're really talking about when Krista, was sharing her information about students becoming more involved in their learning, and Joe as well. What is it that you might like to achieve? And Jan has reiterated that as well. So it all dovetails each other, which is spectacular.
Yes, I'm so glad that that's obvious, because as I'm watching all the schools, I'm thinking, look, it all fits. The pieces go together.
Yeah, it's obvious. Yeah, to me. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks, Eileen. Any other comments or questions for Amity? Thank you, Amity. Up next is Julie. Julie, any comments for the board?
I think it's pretty self-explanatory.
Yep. Any questions for Julie on her report? No, it was a good report, Julie. It was pretty self-explanatory. George, go ahead.
So I didn't appreciate this, but there's an entire section on the non-budget that was attached to your report, and I didn't appreciate that the non-budget is actually delineated into different categories as well. So it's getting late, so I won't do this, but I'll follow up with this some other time. In terms of the actual non-budget items, but non-budget
accounts.
Thank you. Actually separates out into different categories, and yeah, I'm a little bit confused about that, but I'll talk to you some other time.
Thanks, George. Any other questions or comments for Julie? No, thank you. Kathy, any comments for the board?
I think we've talked about most of it, but to Karen's point early in the meeting, I am really grateful that we're able to do a lot of these social emotional learning activities. We have Leah with high school teachers and how to incorporate some of that in the classes. We're doing these screenings because we do have a lot of kids struggling, and look at how many adults are having trouble navigating this world right now. So I'm really grateful we're able to do a lot of those things.
Thanks, Kathy. George, did you have a question?
I think that's an old one.
Oh, is that an old one? I wasn't paying attention. But any comments or questions for Kathy? Awesome. Thanks, Kathy, and great presentation tonight. All right, and then Jan.
One thing I would add is the second bullet point down regarding involving parents in the budget process. This year, we're trying something a little bit different. Typically, we took the show on the road and went around to PTOs and PTAs. And this year, we're actually going to hold next Monday a meeting for groups that we call, parent leaders. So people who are leaders of PTOs and PTAs or other groups and clubs, either they serve on a committee, RAM boosters, or our public relations committee, or Ed Foundation. And we're inviting them to a kind of a high level presentation on our budget and letting them know opportunities where they can support our budget at various points in the process.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. Absolutely. And certainly something all of us should be doing as advocates for our own board and our own budget. as we move the budget forward to make sure that we're, getting the word out. So I think that's a great idea, Jan, and a good reminder. Does anybody have any questions for Jan on her report this week? Nice. All right. So at this point, I would say to the administrators, if you want to drop while we go through our last couple of items, certainly don't want to keep you guys here any later than you need to be, but thank you all for joining tonight. We appreciate you being here.
Good night. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
And then we'll move on to our reports by our board committees and liaisons. And so George, you're up first. Any comments from the budget and fiscal committee?
I know I don't. I mean, I think the presentation that Jan Julie gave, I think is fantastic. I think it's a testament to how hard the budget and fiscal committee has worked. And so I just want to thank the members again for really contributing to fine tuning that presentation and the contents in it. So appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thanks, George. Yeah, excellent job. And thank you to everybody that was on the budget and fiscal committee, going over over that presentation and your contributions. It's what makes it better every year, better and better. Eileen, any comments in regards to CABE?
I'd probably say that CABE's membership is really going up based on all the support that they've given to boards of education that necessarily haven't been members, but because they've opened themselves up to providing guidance during COVID for school board chairs and board members, they're really in a really strong position to provide support.
Great. Thanks, Eileen. Alan, updates from facilities?
So we haven't had a meeting since our last board meeting. But I'm really happy to share that the lighting committee raised for Rams is almost at their goal of 150,000. So that's really exciting. Superintendent Pruccio, Julie Pendleton, Tara, myself, and Scott met with Carl Fortuna this morning, and laid out the plans to hopefully get this project going. And I think Julie is shepherding the next steps, and we're so lucky to have her in our corner. So good news, and hopefully some more positive news in the coming weeks.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Alan. That's great stuff. I can't believe, I guess I shouldn't doubt, right? The Old Sabre community, but that is so impressive how fast that went through. Eileen, do you have a question?
Yeah, I was just going to tell Alan that I'm so glad that we're going to do a brick from our Board of Education. That's really exciting. And thanks for leading that initiative and the funding and how we can best represent that initiative too.
Thanks, Eileen, for those comments. And Tara, yeah, exactly. What a great community we have to be able to support this and stand it up. And thank you to board members. We have a $250 brick that I think I sent it in an email, just very simplistic, but will be in the Walk of Fame as well. So that's good news. Thanks, everybody.
Love it. Love it. That's awesome. Thanks, Alan. So Learn, I think I'm the Learn representative, Jan. I think I forgot that I'm the Learn representative. So maybe we need to let Learn know that, and then me know that, because I forgot.
I will email them tomorrow.
Okay. It was one of those things, like, I know I asked questions about it and then I completely lost track of that. So my fault there. I'm sure we're missing out on some good stuff. Karen, anything on strategic planning?
No, Jan keeps us well informed on strategic plans, so we're okay.
Yeah, I figured as much. Nothing to report from demographics. I think we've all been kind of focused on budget season, et cetera. So we'll probably pick that up when we get out of this new schedule on budget season. So anything, Karen, to add on personnel? I know we've got some negotiations going on.
Negotiations, but we're also gearing up for, the timeline and process for the superintendent's annual evaluation. So we have a meeting March 8th, I think, is our leadership team evaluation meeting. And Trevor and Steve, we're going to need to get together and hopefully with some committee members or Tara, and just sort of review the process, because there's a lot to digest before you jump into it. So we'll next month try and set something up about
That'd
that.
be great. Yeah, thank you, Karen.
You're welcome.
All right. Eileen, anything from policy?
After we approved 17 policies, we're actually just on a little bit of a hold, but not going to be long. As soon as Jan, presents and gives me a jingle, and then I meet with her, and then we will schedule a meeting. But so far, so good.
No rest for the wicked there.
Right. And I also appreciate her sending, the note home, to families and to the teachers, letting them know what's on the agenda and what's been passed so that they can take a look and do a little bit more investigating if they like.
Thanks, Eileen.
Welcome.
And I have nothing special to report. So just like budget, but also budget. And lights and budget. So Steve, did you have a question?
No, I was just getting ready for the.
I love it. The best motion of the night, right? All right. So the only reminders we've got that special meeting coming up on February 1st at 6 p.m. We'll be online. So get your questions in if you've got any in regards to the budget. We look to hopefully adopt the budget that night in preparation for presenting it to the Board of Finance on the 8th, which brings us to the 8th of February. We'll be starting online with the Board of Finance at 6:30 and then transitioning at 7:30 to Board of Education meeting. So Trent, I don't know if we need to change that to a special meeting or a change.
Well, we could change it to a special meeting with a 7:30 start time, or we could leave it as a regular meeting at the 7 o'clock start time and then just not start until 7:30. We just can't start any earlier than 7. We can start as late as we want. So, but that, we can do it either way.
All right, we'll discuss.
Mm-hmm.
George, you have a question?
Yeah, so I must be daydreaming tonight. So I thought I heard something about moving the February 8th meeting earlier that night so we have longer time. No. Okay, I missed it.
So we're at the Board of Finance at 6:30 to present the budget.
I see.
And
So
then, go ahead.
The February 1st meeting is earlier.
Okay, so that's already been. So you're gonna move it earlier than 6 to 5:30? Was that the?
No.
Oh, that has already been moved.
Yeah, it's already set at 6 o'clock on the 1st. Yep. We're going to keep switching it around just to confuse you, and then I'll let you know later. No, I'm kidding. Okay. So, but thank you. Just clear for everybody. All right. So, Steve, anybody looking? Oh, Alan, wait. Alan's got a question. Alan, go ahead.
No, I just want to beat Steve to the punch in terms of making a motion. So my
I'm
hand is
looking for a motion
raised.
to adjourn. Okay, Alan, so moved. Looking for a second on that. Second by Steve. All in favor? Aye. Thank you all so much. I appreciate it, everybody. Great job.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Thanks, Jim.
Have a good night. See you soon.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night. Good night.